On the day I graduated college with honors, my mom handed me an eviction letter. Not a hug, not a congratulations. Just a piece of paper, black ink, cold stare, no words of pride, no smile. Just, you have 48 hours to move out. Your brother needs the room for his new recording studio. I remember staring at that letter, my cap still on, my gown still catching wind at the door. My fingers trembled. I thought it was a joke at first, some twisted prank, but her face? Stone. I wasn't even worth eye contact, just a task to be checked off her list. I stood there, blinking, trying to process. This was supposed to be my moment. After 4 brutal years of grinding through double majors, pulling night shifts at the campus cafe, mailing half my paycheck home, I had earned today. But instead of cheers and family hugs, I got kicked out like a stranger overstaying their welcome. And my brother? He just shrugged. Didn't even wait for me to leave before bringing in his friends, measuring the walls, talking about acoustics like I was already gone. I felt invisible, like I had been playing a part in a family drama that never really needed me, just tolerated me. I thought I was the overachiever daughter, the pride of the family. Turns out I was just temporary furniture, useful until inconvenient. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, surrounded by textbooks, awards, a crumpled graduation sash, all of it suddenly meaningless. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? Was I too quiet? Too independent? Too successful? I kept looking for the flaw that would make it make sense. But the truth was simpler and uglier. This wasn't about me failing. This was about them never really seeing me, not as a daughter, not even as a person, just someone who did the chores, paid some bills, stayed out of the way. And now that my role was done, I was disposable. I remember staring at the letter again, reading the words over and over like maybe they'd change. They didn't. 48 hours. That was the time my own mother thought was generous enough for me to pack up my life and disappear. No parting words, no warmth, just orders. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak in the hallway felt like a countdown. Every breath I took reminded me, I wasn't wanted here. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. I thought about confronting her, asking why, demanding some kind of explanation. But deep down, I already knew what she'd say. She'd say it was time I learned to stand on my own. She'd call it tough love. But love doesn't feel like betrayal. Love doesn't rip the floor out from under you when you're finally starting to stand tall. I started packing the next morning, quiet, mechanical, shirt by shirt, book by book. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't give her the satisfaction, because that was the moment I realized I was never really part of this family, just a means to an end. My name is Elena Rivera. I'm 23, a recent graduate with a degree in social work. Full scholarship, top of my class. But none of that mattered in my house. Not to my mom. Not when compared to Jaden. Jaden, my younger brother by 3 years, has always been the golden child, the future star, the genius of the family, according to our mom, Sylvia. Never mind the fact that he dropped out of college halfway through his first semester, or that he's blown through 3 different startup ideas in the past 2 years. Each one louder and more chaotic than the last. A failed streetwear brand, a podcast that never got past the intro episode, and now a home recording studio, paid for with the space I used to call my room. I've been working since I was 16, 2 jobs at times. During college, I juggled night shifts at the diner and tutoring gigs just to afford books, groceries, and anything my scholarship didn't cover. Jaden? He stayed up all night writing half-baked rap lyrics and sleeping through the day while Mom defended him. He's creative, she'd say. You can't rush art. I wasn't allowed to be creative. I had to be practical, quiet, useful. When COVID hit, I came back home like so many others did. I thought it made sense. Save money, stay safe, get through school online. But the price I paid wasn't financial. It was emotional. Every day felt like walking on eggshells in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. My room became storage for Jaden's broken gear and unopened merch boxes. He'd barge in without knocking. Mom would ask me to keep it down during Zoom lectures because he was recording. When I brought it up, she rolled her eyes. "This is his dream, Elena. Support him." Support him? I was the one buying my own groceries, paying my share of utilities, fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen when no one else noticed. Meanwhile, Jaden was asking followers to Venmo him lunch money. The favoritism wasn't new, just louder now. I remember one birthday. I turned 19. Mom forgot, completely, no cake, no card. But 2 weeks later, Jaden had a full backyard barbecue for his birthday, complete with rented speakers and a custom banner. When I asked her why she didn't do anything for mine, she blinked and said, "You don't even like attention, right?" Another time, I found out my college fund had been drained. Money my grandfather had put aside for me before he passed. I was told it had to be used for an emergency. That emergency? Jaden's failed attempt at launching a mobile app that literally never worked. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I thought one day things would shift. Maybe Mom would see the difference. Maybe Jaden would grow up. Maybe I'd finally be seen not just as the responsible one, but as someone worth cheering for, someone worth loving equally. But the eviction letter on my graduation day, that killed any hope I had left. It was never about me being good enough. It was about me being convenient until I wasn't. Now, standing in the wreckage of everything I thought I knew, I can see the pattern so clearly. I was never nurtured, only used, praised only when it served someone else's narrative. Look at my daughter, she's so mature. But not look at her achievements, not I'm proud. Just quiet expectations followed by louder disappointments anytime I set boundaries. I don't hate Jaden. I wish I could. But mostly, I feel sorry for him. He's been coddled to the point of helplessness. He's chasing an illusion, surrounded by people who enable the fantasy, and one day, when the last follower unfollows, when the streams dry up, he'll look around and see no foundation, just noise. As for my mom, I don't think she's evil. I think she's broken in ways I can't fix. Maybe she sees in Jaden the dream she never chased. Maybe she resents me for being able to carry my own weight. I'll never know. And I've stopped needing the answer, because now I'm done waiting for permission to live my life. This eviction, it wasn't a punishment, it was freedom, dressed in cruelty. I didn't ask for it, but maybe I needed it, because I'm not meant to shrink myself to fit into someone else's story anymore. I'm Elena Rivera, and I'm finally writing my own. When I got home from graduation, I still had the program in my hand, the one with my name printed next to with honors. I'd barely had time to process the ceremony. No family photos, no dinner, just silence. But I was holding on to a sliver of hope. Maybe there'd be something waiting, a cake, a small surprise, even a card. Something that said, "We see you." Instead, I walked into a nightmare. My room was gone, completely gutted. The posters I'd saved from freshman year, rolled up and stuffed in a box. My books, notebooks, framed photos, all crammed into plastic bins stacked by the hallway. Even my bed sheets were stripped. My laptop charger was dangling out of a half-closed tote bag like it had been tossed in mid-rush. It didn't even look like my space anymore. It looked like a moving day for someone else's life. I stood there, frozen, the weight of the moment pressed down on my chest like concrete. I hadn't even taken off my cap. I was still in my graduation gown when my mom walked past me, completely unfazed, holding a can of air freshener and spraying the corners of what used to be my sanctuary. "Oh, good. You're back," she said, like nothing was wrong. "Jaden needs the room now that he's recording full-time." I thought I misheard her. "What?" She sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "He needs his own space. You're done with school. It's time to be an adult, Elena. You can't stay here forever." No warning. No conversation. Just, "You're done. Get out." I looked at Jaden, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in. He didn't even glance up. Like this had all been agreed upon in advance. Like it was obvious. Like I was the one who hadn't gotten the memo. My heart was racing. I couldn't even speak. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to check my bank account. I'd planned to use the little I had left to float me until I landed a job, but when I logged in, I felt my stomach drop. $18.34. The emergency fund I'd been saving for months? Gone. It didn't take long to find out where it went. Rent, equipment, studio foam, Jaden's latest investment, and Mom had co-signed the withdrawals. She didn't even hide it. "I told you," she said, arms crossed. "Family helps family. You wouldn't be where you are without us." Us? I was stunned, silent. I wanted to scream, to cry. But all I could do was stand there, surrounded by packed boxes and broken trust. I left that night. Not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Everything I'd built, every ounce of pride and stability, it had been ripped out from under me in the span of a few hours. I called Ava, my best friend since middle school. I don't remember exactly what I said, just that my voice cracked halfway through, and she told me to come over. No questions. She made up the couch for me, gave me a clean towel, made tea. She didn't say, "I'm sorry," or "It'll be okay." She just sat with me while I unraveled, while I let all the years of holding it together finally fall apart. I barely slept that first night. I kept replaying everything in my head. The boxes, the empty room, Mom's voice saying, "Time to be an adult." Like I hadn't been one all along. Like I hadn't sacrificed sleep, comfort, and sanity just to make something of myself. I kept asking myself the same question. How did I not see this coming? But deep down, I think I did. The signs had been there for years. The forgotten birthdays, the borrowed savings, the way my achievements were always treated like chores checked off a list. Never celebrated, never even acknowledged. It was never about me being ungrateful. I just wanted a place where I mattered. A place where love wasn't conditional or transactional. And now that place, it wasn't home. But maybe that wasn't the tragedy. Maybe that was the truth finally coming to the surface. Maybe getting kicked out was the moment I got free. Ava was the first to say what I hadn't wanted to admit. "You need to check your accounts, all of them." We were sitting in her tiny apartment kitchen, both of us cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a mess of boxes. My boxes. My life. I was still trying to wrap my head around what had happened. But Ava? She was already in solution mode. "She's done this before, Elena. Borrowed without asking. But something feels off. Too calculated. You need proof." I didn't want to believe it. Even after everything, the eviction, the graduation day betrayal, the drained checking account, part of me still clung to the idea that maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Maybe things had spiraled. Maybe Mom didn't realize how deep it had gone. But Ava was right. I had to look, so I started digging. First, I pulled up my old joint bank account, the one I'd opened freshman year with Mom when I was still 17, and too naive to think about things like boundaries or financial control. I'd moved most of my money to a private account once I started working, But apparently, I'd forgotten to unlink one last auto payment, my student loan balance. That payment had bounced. The reason? Overdraft. Dozens of charges had drained the account before the payment even tried to go through. Uber Eats, Sephora, a $600 charge from an online DJ equipment store. Jaden's name was on the shipping receipt. I felt my stomach twist, but that was just the beginning. Ava sat beside me as I logged into another portal, one I hadn't touched in years, my college savings account. It had been set up by my godfather, Uncle Luis, when I was a kid. He wasn't really my uncle by blood, but he'd been my mom's closest friend when I was little. The kind of guy who always remembered birthdays and promised to help put me through school one day. When I opened the account, my hands went numb. Balance, $2.16. My heart dropped into my shoes. That account had over $15,000 in it when I last checked it sophomore year. I thought it had been left untouched. An emergency cushion. Turns out the emergency had been Jaden's rap career. There were years of withdrawals, one after another. Studio equipment, expensive clothing, a GoPro, a gaming chair. I clicked through the records like I was flipping pages in a horror story. All signed, all approved, all drained. I called Uncle Luis. He picked up on the second ring, cheerful at first, until he heard my voice. I told him everything, the eviction, the accounts, the missing money. I was expecting confusion, maybe denial. But what I got instead was stunned silence, then quiet rage. I never gave her permission to touch that money, he said, his voice tight. It was meant for you, only you. I put that account in both your names back then because you were a minor, but Elena, she promised me she wouldn't touch a cent. He paused, like the weight of it had just settled on him. We're going to fix this. And from that moment on, I wasn't alone. Uncle Luis flew in from Houston that weekend. He didn't come empty-handed. He brought folders, old statements, copies of account agreements, even a notarized letter from years ago where he had stated the funds were for my educational use only. We sat at Ava's kitchen table for hours, piecing things together. Every charge, every suspicious withdrawal. It wasn't just the money, it was the pattern, the manipulation, the quiet erosion of my future, masked as support for Jaden's dreams. That's when we found it. Buried in a folder of old bank documents was a secondary savings account, one I didn't even know existed. It had been opened in my name, but the signature on the form wasn't mine. I stared at it for a long time. The signature was a clumsy imitation. My name written with just enough effort to look real at a glance. But I knew my own handwriting, and this wasn't it. She forged it, I said, my voice flat. Luis leaned over. Looks like she used your name to open a shadow account, then slowly transferred money from the scholarship fund into it, so she could spend it without it flagging any alerts. I felt sick. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This wasn't just borrowing or helping Jaden. This was theft, fraud, years of it. But more than anything, it was betrayal. She had looked me in the eyes for years and said, "We're doing our best," told me to be patient, told me to grow up, told me to understand Jaden's situation, all while she was draining the one lifeline I had, the one someone else had built for me out of love and faith, all so my brother could buy microphones and fake followers. Ava stayed silent, letting me process. Uncle Luis gently placed his hand on mine. "You're not crazy," he said. "You're not overreacting. And this ends now." I nodded, but the tears came anyway. Not because I was sad, not even because I was angry, but because for the first time in a long time, someone believed me. Someone saw me, not as a wallet, not as a support system, not as a fallback plan, but as a person who deserved better. and I was done being quiet. After days of sleepless nights and digging through paperwork, I finally moved into a real room, not a couch, not a borrowed floor space, but a small guest room at Ava's neighbor's place. Just a bed, a lamp, and a desk. But it was quiet, and it was mine. I still didn't feel settled. The rug had been ripped out from under me so fast, I was still waiting to hit the ground. But at least now I had help. Uncle Luis wasn't just mad. He was livid. I'd never seen him like that before. The quiet, kind man who used to sneak me candy at cookouts now had fire in his eyes, and a lawyer on speed dial. "We're not letting this slide," he told me, flipping through a stack of freshly printed bank statements. "This isn't just shady parenting. This is a crime." Together we started building a case, collecting everything: receipts, account records, email correspondence, even old texts where Mom promised to take care of the money and keep it safe for emergencies. Turns out, in her world, emergency meant Jaden wanting a ring light and sushi. But the biggest twist hadn't hit us yet. Luis's attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Carla, began poking into my financial history to prep for potential court action. I thought it was just to confirm the scholarship account, the joint bank account, the withdrawals, routine stuff. Then she called one evening, voice low and urgent. "Elena," she said, "we found something you need to see. You had a trust fund set up by your grandparents before they passed." I froze. What? "It was meant to be used solely for your education and future housing. A restricted trust. Pretty ironclad, but it was transferred. 4 years ago." "Transferred to who?" "To your mother, using documents that claimed you were not financially responsible enough to manage large funds on your own." I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. What?" I whispered. Carla continued, calmly but clearly disturbed. "She filed a formal petition to reassign herself as the custodian of the trust. She submitted a letter, allegedly written and signed by you, stating you requested that she manage the fund to prevent poor spending decisions." "Elena, that signature doesn't match anything else you've ever signed." My ears started ringing. I remembered none of it. No petition, no letter, no discussion. Just silence. While she quietly dismantled the one safety net my grandparents had left me. Luis was speechless when I told him. I saw something shift in his face, not just anger, but grief. Like he had finally realized just how deep this betrayal ran. "She lied to everyone," he said finally, "to the court, to me, to you." Carla started assembling the case. Now it wasn't just about misused money. It was about fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. As we dug deeper, we found more inconsistencies. Bills that didn't match timelines, email addresses Mom had used to impersonate me, even a document claiming I had emotional and financial instability during college and was unfit to manage significant funds. That was the final punch to the gut. My mother had told the court I was unfit while I was working double shifts, while I was winning academic awards, while I was literally holding our household together. I didn't cry right away. I just sat in the room alone that night, staring at a photo I hadn't thrown away yet. Me, at age 10, grinning with frosting on my face, Mom beside me smiling like she meant it. And I asked myself, did she ever really see me as her daughter? Or just as an asset to manage, control, and eventually discard? I didn't know. But I did know this. I wasn't staying silent anymore, and I wasn't letting her rewrite the narrative. Luis backed me at every step. "This isn't revenge," he told me. "This is about reclaiming what was stolen from you, your future, your voice." We began preparing the legal paperwork. Carla filed a formal motion to restore control of the trust to me, with supporting evidence of forgery and manipulation. She also drafted a civil suit for financial abuse, which, as it turns out, isn't as rare as people think, especially when it happens within families. I used to think betrayal was a dramatic word. I used to tell myself families just made mistakes, that people like my mom meant well but didn't know better. Not anymore. Now I know what betrayal looks like. It looks like smiling through your graduation while your mother signs over your savings to fund your brother's mixtape. It looks like empty accounts and full lies. It looks like a daughter being labeled incompetent so her own money can be stolen in the broad daylight. But here's what else I've learned. Betrayal isn't the end of the story. It's the part where everything finally becomes clear. And once it's clear, you can finally begin to fight back. Filing the legal claim was like opening a floodgate. Once we submitted the petition to reclaim the stolen funds, things moved quickly, too quickly to process. Carla handled the filings, and Uncle Luis stayed by my side every step of the way, making sure I never had to stand in front of this mess alone. But I wasn't ready for what we'd uncover next. A week after filing, Carla called me into her office. Her tone was calm, but I could hear something different in it, like she was trying to soften the blow before it landed. "Elena," she said, gently sliding a file toward me. "There's more." I braced myself. "When we subpoenaed the financial records connected to your grandmother's estate, we found something unexpected. There wasn't just one trust." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "There were two." She opened the file. "Your grandmother set up two separate trusts before she passed, one for you and one for Jaden. Yours was to be unlocked when you turned 21, strictly for housing and education. Jaden's, however, had a spending restriction. After his first round of withdrawals went to luxury sneakers and club expenses, the bank froze his access until he completed a financial responsibility course." I stared at the paper like it was written in another language. "So, she had access to mine, but not his." "Exactly," Carla said, "and she knew it. I didn't even need to ask what came next. I felt it in my bones." "She forged my signature again, didn't she?" Carla nodded. "Not just once, multiple times. She submitted letters on your behalf claiming you were willing to defer control to her due to lack of financial maturity. There's handwriting analysis on record now, bank footage, time-stamped surveillance showing her entering a loan, presenting forged documents." My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. This wasn't just manipulation. This wasn't just bad parenting. This was a felony. And the only thing worse than knowing she'd done it was realizing how long she thought she could get away with it. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in energy, clinical, distant, like the entire space had been stripped of warmth to leave only the facts. My mom sat across from me at the defense table, dressed in a pressed blazer she probably hadn't worn since my high school graduation. Jaden sat beside her, fidgeting like he wanted to be anywhere else. I couldn't tell if he was nervous or just bored. Luis sat beside me. His hand on my shoulder grounded me more than anything else that day. The judge reviewed the case, calmly outlining the charges: financial exploitation, document forgery, misappropriation of trust funds. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Jaden was called to the stand. He shifted in his seat like a child about to be scolded. He glanced at my mom once, then at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something like shame in his eyes. The attorney asked, "Mr. Rivera, were you aware that the funds used for your music studio, equipment, and personal expenses were sourced from your sister's education trust?" Jaden swallowed hard. "No," he said, I didn't know. I thought it was just family money. I never asked." "Did your mother inform you of the origin of the funds?" He looked at Mom. She didn't return the gaze. No, he admitted. She said it was handled, that she was helping both of us. It wasn't a dramatic confession, but in that sterile courtroom, it cracked something wide open. Then came the evidence. Surveillance footage from the bank showing Mom presenting documents, the handwriting comparison, the email trail where she impersonated me using a throwaway address. Every lie laid bare, piece by piece, until the judge had seen enough. In the end, the court ruled decisively. All financial control would be transferred immediately to Uncle Luis, acting as trustee. The trust was to be restored using assets seized from Mom's accounts, what little was left of them. She was ordered to repay what she could through structured installments, and as a condition of leniency, she had to attend court-mandated financial counseling and fraud education. But what stung more than the judgment was the silence afterward. My mom never turned to face me, not once. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just stood there, a statue in nice clothes, as her world unraveled. And me? I didn't feel victorious. Not really. I felt free, because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe her anything. Not my time, not my money, not my silence. The courtroom emptied slowly. Luis hugged me tightly. Jaden walked past me on his way out. He didn't say a word, but he nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't peace. But maybe it was a start. I walked out of that courthouse with more than just legal control over my future. I walked out with a new story, one I wasn't afraid to tell anymore. For years, I'd believed I had to play the role, the dutiful daughter, the peacemaker, the responsible one who made excuses for everyone else's chaos. But that part of me died the day I saw my name forged on a bank document. Now, I'm building something different, with my own name, my own voice, my own choices, and I'll never let anyone steal that from me again. The courtroom lights were unforgiving, all white glare and hard corners, but I wasn't scared anymore, not like before. I sat straight, heart steady, flanked by Uncle Luis and Carla, the university legal clinic's advisor. She'd taken my case the moment she heard the words forged, signature, and trust fund. I wasn't just a student to her, I was a victim of fraud. And I finally had people who saw that. The case was clear. Surveillance footage showed my mother walking into the bank alone, using a forged letter to impersonate me. Signature analysis proved the handwriting wasn't mine. There were emails from fake addresses, statements linked to her IP address, paper trails connecting every purchase to Jaden's so-called studio. When the footage played in court, my mother sliding fake documents across the desk to the bank clerk, smiling like it was routine. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just watched. And when Jaden took the stand, for once, he didn't try to charm his way out. I didn't know, he said. I really didn't know where the money came from. I thought it was family savings or something. Mom always told me not to worry about it. He paused, looked down, then added, "She told me Elena was doing fine. That she had scholarships, that she didn't need the money." His voice cracked a little. If I'd known, I never would have taken it. For a moment, I saw the brother I used to believe in, the one who used to sneak Pop-Tarts into my lunchbox in 5th grade. Maybe part of him had gotten lost in her version of things too. The court ruled in our favor. All rights to the trust were transferred permanently to Uncle Luis until I chose to manage them myself. My mother was ordered to pay restitution and sentenced to mandatory financial rehabilitation, fraud counseling, restitution hearings, supervision. Not jail, but not freedom either. She didn't speak to me once, not even after the verdict. And honestly, that was closure enough. I started over with nothing but a few boxes, a notebook full of passwords, and a laptop I thought I'd never see again. It had been pawned, apparently. But when Ava's neighbor, the same one who rented me the spare room, found out what happened, she tracked it down and gave it back to me, no questions asked. "You're gonna need this," she said, handing it to me like it was armor. She was right. First thing I did? Opened a brand new bank account, private, secure. In my name, mine alone. Then I started applying for jobs. Not out of desperation, but from a place of clarity. I knew what I was worth now, and I knew what I'd overcome. Through Ava, I landed an interview with Horizon Strategies, a mid-sized marketing firm looking for a project assistant with a background in social advocacy. I walked in nervous, but walked out hired. Turns out, when you've survived a legal war with your own family, pitching campaign ideas isn't that scary. I got the job, full-time. Benefits, a real paycheck. And with that first paycheck, I did something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. I booked a therapist. Therapy cracked open parts of me I didn't know were still bruised. We talked about family roles, the golden child, and the scapegoat. How some parents choose one child to lift up and one to blame. Jaden had been the chosen one. I'd been the workhorse, the fixer, the quiet one who held everything together until I couldn't anymore. It wasn't just about the money. It was about how I'd been trained to expect nothing, to feel guilty for needing anything at all. Week by week, I started to unlearn that. I forgave myself for not seeing the red flags sooner. I stopped shrinking myself to fit the version of me my mother had created. Obedient, invisible, replaceable. I began living on my own terms. And then, I started thinking bigger. At first, it was just an idea scribbled in the margins of a journal. There should be something for students like me, kids who get kicked out after graduation, whose families weaponize money, whose parents treat trust funds like personal wallets. So I built it. With help from Ava and a few friends from the university's legal clinic, I launched ClearStart, a nonprofit that provides legal and financial support to students facing family-based financial abuse. We offer workshops on how to protect your assets, how to build independent credit, how to close shared accounts. We partner with therapists, lawyers, and survivors. We even started a scholarship for students whose parents cut them off without warning. The first application cycle? We got over 300 emails in 1 week. Turns out I wasn't alone, not even close. Sometimes I still think about my mother, not out of hate, but out of disbelief, that someone could justify so much damage and call it love. But I don't need answers from her anymore. I have peace now. Not the fake kind that comes from silence, but the kind that grows when you tell the truth, even when it's ugly. I have a new home, a job, friends who are more like family, and a sense of power I built myself. And every time I get an email from someone saying, "I thought I was the only one," I remember how far I've come. Because I am not what they did to me. I am what I built after. And this time, no one gets to take it away. After the trial, everything felt quieter. Not in a peaceful way at first. More like the stillness that follows an earthquake. You look around and wonder what's left standing. What's real? What can be rebuilt? Sylvia was ordered to pay restitution, though we all knew it would take years to recover even a portion of what she took. But that wasn't the point anymore. The trust was back in safe hands, with Uncle Luis as the legal custodian until I chose to take full control. And that control gave me the freedom I never had before. I used the money not to start over for myself, but to build something bigger. Something that could reach beyond just my story. ClearStart became real, not just an idea, a registered nonprofit, a small team, a hotline, a free online resource library. Our mission was simple: to protect and empower college students financially exploited by their families, especially those who don't even know what's happening to them yet. We held our first workshop 2 months after the ruling. It was packed. Students cried in the hallway, not because of what I had said, but because someone finally named what had happened to them. And still, amidst all the rebuilding and forward motion, I kept thinking about Jaden. I hadn't spoken to him since the court date. Part of me didn't want to. I was exhausted. He had stood by for years while everything was taken from me, whether he meant to or not. He let it happen. But then he showed up. No warning, just a knock on the door at Ava's place one evening. I opened it, and there he was. Hoodie, hands in pockets, looking more like the kid I used to skateboard with than the guy I'd seen on Instagram flexing rented studio gear. "Hey," he said, "can I talk?" Part of me wanted to shut the door, but I didn't. He sat on the edge of the couch, eyes on the floor the whole time. "I didn't know how bad it was," he said. "I swear to God, I didn't. I thought Mom had a plan. I thought she was helping us both. She always said you were fine, that you had everything handled." He looked up. I should have asked. I should have known. There was no script for this. No clear right thing to say. I just listened. "I've been doing therapy too," he said. "Court ordered, but I'm sticking with it. I've been reading about manipulation, emotional enmeshment, all that stuff. Turns out being the golden child isn't a blessing either." I felt something shift in me. Not forgiveness yet, but recognition. He was waking up to a truth I'd been living in for years. "I want to do it right this time," he added. "I'm enrolling at the community college. Music theory and production. Real classes. Not YouTube hype. No more shortcuts. No more Mom trying to make me into something I'm not even ready for." He took a deep breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing you, for letting her pit us against each other. That cracked something open, because deep down, I hadn't wanted to lose my brother. I just wanted him to see me, and now he was trying. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it means something, and I think we both have work to do." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there in silence for a minute, two kids finally speaking without anyone else writing the script for them. Since then, we've been rebuilding. Slowly. He helps out at Clear Start when he can, setting up chairs, running sound checks, helping us build out a podcast to reach more students. He's still learning what it means to be accountable, but he's trying, and that's more than I expected. We're not perfect, but we're honest now. And sometimes that's where healing begins. 1 year later, I stood on a stage, not at a graduation podium, not in a courtroom. This was different. The auditorium was packed. Local organizers, student leaders, even a few of my old professors. I was being honored with a Community Impact Award for my work with Clear Start, the nonprofit that started as a journal scribble in the middle of heartbreak. As I looked out over the crowd, something in me settled. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as someone's daughter, not as someone's sister, not as a background character, just me. My name, my work, my voice. Jaden was there, clapping loud from the third row, recording it all like a proud little brother. His rap career? Still non-existent. But he's enrolled full-time now, studying music the real way. He even interns at a community radio station. We don't talk every day, but we talk enough. My mom? Still bitter, still unreachable. But for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for her approval anymore. I'd stopped chasing apologies from people who weren't ready to give them. I'd built something, and no one could take it from me. The surprise came 2 months after the ceremony. A letter, handwritten, tucked into a pale blue envelope with no return address. but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Slanted, careful, always too perfect to be real. My mother. I stood by the mailbox, reading it in full. It wasn't quite an apology. She said she was sorry for how things turned out, that she wished she'd handled things differently. But she never named the betrayal, never used the word wrong, still trying to explain it all away like it had just gotten complicated. But for once, her words didn't send me spiraling. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and went about my day. No reply, no closure sent back. And yet, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Some endings don't come with neat bows. Some don't come with full accountability. But that doesn't mean you have to stay tangled in them. Just before my 24th birthday, I received one more unexpected gift: a deed. It arrived by courier, wrapped in thick parchment and embossed with a seal. It was from Grandma Estella. We hadn't been close after Grandpa died. I always thought she'd pulled away from everyone, but Luis had kept her updated, told her about the trial, about Clear Start, about me standing on my own. And apparently she'd been watching, quietly, closely. The deed was to a small cabin up in the hill country, a piece of land my grandfather had always said he'd pass down, to whoever carried on the Rivera name with integrity. It wasn't fancy, one bedroom, rustic, surrounded by pine and silence, but it was mine, a place untouched by drama, unbothered by the past, just clean air, creaky floorboards, and the soft hum of birds in the morning. I didn't sell it. I didn't rent it out. I kept it, a sanctuary. A reminder that even in families torn by betrayal, some legacies survive. I threw my 24th birthday party in my own apartment, surrounded by people who felt like home. Ava brought 3 kinds of cake. Jaden played DJ, nervously but excitedly showing off a few mixes he'd been working on. My coworkers from Horizon Strategies came, laughing too loud and asking if I'd run for city council someday. Uncle Luis stood by the window with a drink in his hand and pride in his eyes. He was the one who toasted me at midnight, lifting his glass and saying, "To the girl who gave everything and finally kept something for herself." We clinked glasses. We danced. We lived. And afterward, when the guests were gone and the candles were blown out, I stepped out onto my balcony, barefoot, with a blanket over my shoulders. The city below was quiet. The sky was turning that soft shade of lavender blue just before sunrise. The kind of light that doesn't demand anything, it just shows up. And as I stood there, breathing it in, I thought about everything that had come before. The room stripped on graduation day, the empty bank accounts, the forged letters, the courtroom, the letters that never said enough. And then I thought about now. A job I loved, a mission I believed in, a version of myself that I respected. They tried to define me by how much I could give. But now I choose who gets to stay in my life. And that is the greatest freedom of all.